Here's your host, Alex Garrett.
Well, I've recently been getting more involved with WordPress and adapting with Alex Garrett, alexginnyc.net. And someone who also has been following my WordPress, thankfully, and I'm honored, is he goes by the username Dirty Minded Buddha, but he actually has a name. Kent Wayne. Kent, you are the Dirty Minded Buddha, so thanks for joining me today.
Yes, sir. Great to be podcasting with you, Alex. Yes, it's Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha, but that's all right. No, Dirty Minded Buddha is pretty accurate as well.
It's very interesting, your screen name, and I appreciate the humor to it, the openness. But let's start there. WordPress. Why do you use it, and how has it helped you grow?
Well, why do I use it? It's kind of a convoluted story, but okay. So colorful stories belong on podcasts. Once upon a time I was in the military, and then I got sucked into a cult, like a meditation cult. And part of their whole thing was, the members should be proficient at the computer stuff. And WordPress, they had these kind of like hokey classes where it's like, look, check out what you can do with, I don't know. It's been so long. It was like 10 years ago when I was in this thing, like Oracle or WordPress was one of the things. And my ex did a little WordPress project. She was in the cult too. She did a WordPress project of her own, and I was like, okay, well, I think I have a idea. I think I have a book in my head. So I'm just going to start a blog, start advertising some free sample chapters, and then it grew from there. I started like running ads, started interacting, so forth and so forth, and that's how I got to WordPress, basically. Well, all because of a cult.
But look at what you've done with it. Now you've got another book out, which we'll get to in a little bit. It sounds like WordPress inspired it. But I also could tell you're a writer by nature, and I think that shows.
Could you? So I'm not trying to. I don't want to interrupt your steam, but could you expound on that? I got my own ideas about what that means, but I'd like to hear what you think that means.
I just think that you're very creative and you write a lot. So I'm guessing it started well before WordPress, right? That you've been writing.
Sorry. Hold on a second.
No worries.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead. Stupid phones, random alarms. Yeah. I'm basically just an overthinker, is how I describe it. So I got to put my overly. You sound kind of the same way. If you're in the creative field, you're looking at things from 10 different angles where other people, I'm not trying to sound elitist here, where other people are going to look at them for, maybe 2 or 3. And you want to go down the rabbit hole in a few things, but you can't do it in conversation. You just come off as like some kind of obsessed weirdo, right? I mean, if you're not polished, which is that's what a writer is supposed to do. They're supposed to take all their, well, in my mind, is they're supposed to go down the rabbit hole, polish it up so that it's presentable when somebody reads it, but it's kind of, if you've ever seen like behind the scenes on a movie or whatnot, they're talking about stuff that like you had no idea was the backdrop of the conceptual theme they're pushing in the film, right? They're talking about like 10,000 different angles and subtleties that you had no idea was in the film, but all that stuff was foundational for what you actually saw in the movie. So yeah, to make a long winding point short is I think with a writer, you're basically somebody who, or any creative person, you're basically somebody who wants to look at things from a lot more angles than, is generally accepted in kind of a more mundane social setting.
Well, let me ask you this. Does Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha, that resonates with you? Obviously, that's how people know you. I've got to ask this because you're so active on there as that username. Do people know you actually have a real name? Like, do they ever look into your work, or do they kind of just see you on WordPress and then move along? Like, have you formed friendships on there or whatnot?
Yeah. There's been some, I guess a polite way to say it would be some romantic interest that bloomed from the interactions. And, some women get to know my real name, but for the most part, I just keep it Kent Wayne.
Well, and that's a great name. By the way, my middle name is Kent, so I guess we have that in common too.
Oh, awesome!
I don't know if you were named after Superman, but my middle name is named after Clark Kent. So.
Oh, really?
There's
no,
that
I picked it on purpose. Yeah, like I felt like Batman, Superman was kind of like the modern day, is like a very balanced yin yang type.
Yes,
dynamic,
I said okay. Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne. I love it. I love it even more now. And I knew your energy was going to be worth talking to, so that's why I'm glad I even reached out and you actually accepted my message. So thanks for that.
Pleasure.
Well, let's talk about the other work you're doing. Well, let's start there. The dystopian. You do a lot of dystopian work. Did you ever write it thinking we might actually be in a dystopian world? Were you thinking we're heading that way, that's why you wrote it? Or is this a shock to you that we've sort of seemed to hit a dystopia here?
Never. I never thought, I mean, I'm pretty sure like, most people are saying this, we're saying this in March. I never thought anything like this would happen. The dystopian stuff from me, it came from what I saw as, it's sad to say, is like what I feared would happen, for what I saw in pop culture. But I'm being a little too vague. So back in 2015 is when I started writing novels, and specifically dystopian stuff. I saw people unwilling to listen to each other, just kind of the conversational tactics became more of like, let me show you how I'm right and why it's better than your point. And that shifted over to, I'm just going to humiliate you and cancel you, or do whatever it takes to get a mob of people against you. And so that's kind of what led to Echo, where there's basically only two fighting parties, like the dissidents and the regime. But it sounds like you're referencing the pandemic, but no, I never thought the pandemic would happen.
So you're saying that people who write dystopia don't actually expect it to happen. They just write it because they know people will be thrilled by it one way or another.
I didn't. Well, as a writer, it's kind of like my duty, I think, to take an intriguing possibility and amplify it. So I want to make sure I answer your question directly, but I want to also give you a direct answer on why I wrote the dystopian stuff in the first place. Sure. I saw the lack of civil interaction, and I decided to amplify that as much as I could in my dystopia. That's how I came to the dystopia. But as far as people being interested in it, I guess they would naturally be, right. If you place your problems, if you pick your problems right, if they're relevant to the modern day times, and then you amp them up as much as possible, then they should garner interest if you polish them up and made them socially relevant.
I'm talking about Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha. You can find him at WordPress there, but his real name is Kent Wayne. He's a writer. He's a podcaster. Also something I'm very interested to get into, because you're talking about inspiration with a little twist, so I want to get to that. But did the military time bring you to like this dystopian feeling? Did that have any bearing on why you started to go into it? Yeah, it did. I mean, it kind of interacted. I had a lot of injuries in the military, and it took a little bit for me to, get some of my bodily functions back, like walking around and stuff like that. But I eventually, I'm good now. I'm not missing any limbs. I can still do jujitsu every now and then. But I was very disappointed. I wanted a different track in the military. I wanted to make it a career, but it got cut short because of my injuries. And I saw a lot of what I perceived to be systemic dysfunction. So I took that and I put it I amped it up as much as possible, and then I put it into the novel. I mean, you read Echo, it's a military novel basically, and it's filled with the worst aspects of the military, not just cussing, but like people stabbing each other in the back and stuff. And that's not all the military is, obviously, sure. But I wanted to dramatize it. Well, and thank you for your service, by the way. What branch were you in?
I don't talk about branches. I was in multiple branches.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I just don't get into the specifics of the military stuff.
Well, thanks for serving anyway. I'm sure it was tough, but thank you for doing that. Are you? No worries. Do you ever share your location, like where you're from, or not really? Is that all covert too?
Oh yeah. Right now I'm in. No, definitely not. Like I avoid the military stuff, not because I'm a badass or because it was super hard or dramatic. Most of it's kind of embarrassing and disappointing. So it's really not as dramatic as some might think it is. So I just don't get into the details. There's guys who do the dramatic, who are real deal military guys who can tell way better stories than I can. I might be able to tell a funny story here or there, and probably just some demoralizing ones. But as far as like my location, I just moved down from San Francisco, in June down to San Diego. But I've lived on both coasts. I grew up on the East Coast near the DC metro area. Before that, I was in Wisconsin for, about 12 years of my life. So, yeah.
Well, it's good. So you moved during the pandemic, or did you move pre-pandemic to San Diego?
Yeah, I moved to the pandemic. Earlier I mentioned I was retired, so like it's basically some real estate stuff. I don't know if your readers want to learn about financial nerd stuff, but it was some real estate stuff. Basically, setting up a primary residence, moving back into my rented out condo, set up a primary residence so I could access some better interest rates through a more HELOC. But I don't know if I'll probably just cut that short. Your readers probably don't want to hear about that stuff.
Well, I just covered the other day about how they want to flip office buildings into apartments in the middle of Manhattan, which I'm kind of against, but we can talk about that another day. But they want to flip offices into houses. It's very, I don't think affordable housing should be in Times Square, but that's just me.
All I know about New York real estate is that it seems super unaffordable to me. But I mean, so wait a second, like, if it is a topic, you tell me if this is appropriate to your conversation. We can always switch topics, but why wouldn't you want more housing instead of offices?
Well, I would want it, but I don't think I'd want it in the middle of Manhattan because to me, affordable housing would be kind of like I feel like it'd be the NYCHA residence, which NYCHA has had plenty of issues in the outer boroughs, and I just don't think that should be in Midtown. It's just also, Kent, there's another idea that by seceding office space, we're saying you don't have to go back to work. I'm saying no, we got to keep these offices and inspire people to get back to work safely. That's kind of how I feel about it.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So the trade-off isn't worth it. Is what I'm getting from you.
Yeah, I don't think it is. Back with Kent Wayne after this.
Don't miss Alex Garrett Podcasting.
Hey, I'm back with this Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha. That's how you know I'm on WordPress. Kent Wayne. Speaking of podcasting,
for sure. All right.
I'm sure that's why you also do the podcasting, because you have a lot to say. And now you're doing it through the spoken word on your podcast. Inspiration as P-H-U-C-K, not F-U-C-K. Inspiration as fuck. But that's just cool in and of itself. Like, you just change it up. Instead of inspired AF, AF, it's inspire AP, which I think is kind of cool. So tell us about your podcast.
The podcast, I'm kind of taking a little break from it. I just basically put my friends on it. It's people I know. It was kind of like, so the reason I started podcasting was because with writing, well, first, I mean, the simple reason is because I was like, man, Joe Rogan does it, and he's always entertaining, and it seems like it's really not that much setup required. That's a simple reason. But like more of a step up from that is because writing, it requires so much polishing. There's rhythm in the words, even when they're not spoken. You have to make sure that there's a certain cadence to them so that they slide, for lack of better descriptions, they slide easily into your reader's mind. So that you're trying to remove the burden I'm trying to remove the burden of a reader having to think through what I just said. Even if he didn't, and you know what, a step up from that is even if they don't understand what I wrote, I want them to feel what I intend. I don't know if that makes sense, but if you've seen a movie where you didn't quite understand what was going on, but it was still great because it evoked feeling from you.
Well, you know what I like to do? Sometimes I do these on WordPress too. Like I do these like greeting on the go, and I just talk about different things, and then putting it into spoken word is so cool because it's like now I got another outlet to put them on, which I always find fun, just cross promoting it all, really.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the point I was getting to, is because with a spoken word, I don't need to do all that editing. I edit a page, I think like on average, like 30 times before I publish it. I'm just like finicky. I'm just one of those finicky writers, I guess. But with the spoken word, there's pretty much no cuts, no editing, just blah, Mm-hmm. I get to express myself and then kick myself later if I think I said something stupid. But.
And the obviously the readership and the listenership are growing for you, and you got your own website too. Tell us about your own website.
It's dirtyscifibuddha.com. Basically just a platform for where I can put my free sample chapters out. I kind of follow the model of Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian. I'm not really looking to make it'd be nice to make money from this. It'd be nice to get a movie deal. I always write with the hope of that, and the dream, the holding the excitement of that dream. But I don't. If you tie yourself to the expectation, you're just going to make yourself miserable. So I just have fun with it. I put the sample chapters out, and as far as the, I'm kind of rambling a bit, but the Andy Weir thing, he just had his book out for free on his blog, The Martian, for like 10 years. Asking people like, hey, do you like it? Or he's asking scientists, where am I going wrong, and stuff like that. And then eventually it started picking up steam, and the rest is history. So I figured I would do the same way. I just have fun with it. I just offer it for free. I do a lot of Amazon giveaways. And you can check out that stuff on dirtyscifibuddha.com. There's sample chapters for all my books. I got Echo, I got Core Thank, Barbarian Valley Girl, which is that's like just that's more of a comedy. That's not really anything deep. There's deep stuff in it. And I got my new one coming up, The Unbound Realm, which is my first thing at the young adult fantasy.
Well, that's very cool, and keep us updated on that. You talk about sci-fi, and I'm just thinking to myself, Kent probably watched, all these different movies growing up, War of the Worlds and other things. Did you grow up on those kind of movies, or what was that an inspiration for you?
Well, first of all, when I was growing up, I was an idiot. I'm not much better now, but I was like oblivious. I was unaware of how idiotic I was. So that's like a double idiot. But yeah, when I was growing up, I watched Star Wars incessantly. And to give you a taste of my idiocy, I would try to watch it so much that I could say the lines along with the characters, while I was watching them. And then if I saw my brother watching something different, I would shame him for not watching Star Wars. But I mean, I'm not that much of a fanboy now. I still like it and everything, but yeah, I was pretty obsessive when I grew up.
Since Disney took over, do you like the way they've done it, or have they lost the Lucas feel to it altogether?
They definitely lost some of the Lucas feel, but they've kept enough of it where I like it. I mean, yeah, there's problems with I have issues. With it's rough and bumpy, but in the end, what I want is a big dumb movie where all I'm looking forward to is those big climactic moments, And with those movies, I have a lot of leeway because, I mean, for Pete's sake, it's in Return of the Jedi, right? Everybody's seen. So Luke's big plan to save his friends is to just basically surrender himself, put himself at the mercy of this gangster, and then turn it all around by triple somersaulting off a plank he's supposed to walk. That's his master plan. So it's those big dumb moments, they don't need that much intricacy. They're not meant to be Christopher Nolan Inception style complicated. So, and I feel like the new ones delivered enough of those moments where I'm just I like them.
Do you like the holographs of, Carrie Fisher? I mean, is that overdoing it, or should she still be in the series somehow?
I don't. That's something I don't really. I don't have a real strong opinion about. I mean, if they do it and it's it's not too hokey, if it's not too grainy or whatever, or weird looking, then I'm fine with it.
Well, you're talking about Christopher Nolan, of course. I think he is synonymous to me with the Batman series, but. Yeah, the Batman vs Superman, Kent Wayne. I got to ask you about that one because it didn't feel like I was watching an actual movie. It did feel like the fighting scenes were a video game, and actually that turned me off a little bit. It didn't feel as real as I wanted it to be in some parts of that Batman vs Superman.
Yeah, I haven't liked any of the DC movies except for Aquaman. Surprised me. I really liked that. Was a big dumb 80s movie. It pulled no punches, trying to be something else. And Man of Steel was all right. I feel like they just they didn't really push it as much as they could have they could have made a decent movie into a great movie, but they decided not to, probably because of executive influence. As far as the Batman versus Superman, yeah, I think it just felt like they were just trying to check boxes, honestly. I grew up reading comics. I know about all that stuff is based on Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns from the 1980s. It's like a seminal work that turned Batman from a goofy, campy Adam West type Batman into this badass, brooding old man that was able to go toe to toe with Superman. Unfortunately, it was it was just. I have no better description for it than it was just checking the boxes and trying to pay enough tribute to the fanboy, superficial tribute to the fans, and then also like put in as much special effects and moving the plot forward to whatever other movie they're going to do next. And to me, I was just like, come on, man, make this a good movie. Then
Exactly.
you can go, focus on what you're doing, make that a good movie, then worry about the rest afterwards. Otherwise, you want good movie after good movie. You don't want a long stream of crap, So unfortunately, that's how I feel about it.
Now,
for the same way as you.
On the other hand, Wonder Woman, they've actually done a great job with Gal Gadot, I thought. I don't know if you watched them all, but I find that to be a very solid movie 2 times now.
Really? Okay. I haven't seen the second one. The first one, I didn't. I'm not trying to just be contrarian, but I did not get what people liked about it that much. I mean, it wasn't terrible. I guess that was like the biggest thing for me. Is like as another DC movie, I was like, oh, this is gonna be terrible. But it was good, like strong performance. But I didn't feel like anything struck that emotion. I'm looking for those moments where in the original Star Wars, when Luke is making his Death Star run, right? And you hear Obi-Wan's voice saying like, use the Force, Luke. From what people say to me, I've from conversations I've had with people who actually saw it in the theaters, like people stood up and cheered at that moment.
Wow.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for in like these big dumb adventure movies or superhero movies. And I didn't feel anything like that from Wonder Woman. But I'm not just trying to poo-poo it. But like, let me ask you, what did you like about Wonder Woman? Are you talking about the second one or the first one?
The first one was strong. I mean, she just was badass, and she was, she owned that role, and I just loved it. The second one, it just is even more cool because she just uses her power. I don't know. There's something about it I like. I can't really describe it because I don't go in depth in the movies. I just enjoy the action of it, I guess. I don't really analyze it. Now, one thing I do analyze is the Superman because I happen to meet Christopher Reeve up at Yankee Stadium.
Really?
When he was paralyzed, in the power chair. And that was a big moment because Mom and my dad put me in Superman from baby onward, and that's been like one of my main themes of my life, Superman. And so to see him was great. But the one thing I'll always never forget is
awesome.
seeing him become bad after being good. It was like that whole thing of him becoming bad was just so shocking to me. I can't get over that.
Wait, are you talking about like was it like in Superman 2?
Yeah,
he's like fighting Clark Kent is fighting an evil version. Yeah. I remember that.
I can't ever get over.
I was just like, what the hell is this?
I can't get over it. But you say campy. I hope you don't find that Superman was campy because I don't think those Superman movies were as campy as anything. I think they were pretty solid actually for 70s movies. Anyhow,
I like especially for 70s movies. And one of the biggest the thing they should I don't think they should ever have messed. Do you allow swearing on your podcast? I mean, I'm not trying to pressure you.
Whatever you want to do. I'm cool. I'm cool.
Okay. So you let me know if I get in line. So usually I swear a lot, especially with my friends. But they totally fucked it up because with the new ones. Because the greatest thing about the 70s Supermans, in my opinion, one of the greatest, the theme song. Like you did not have to know who Superman was. Music comes with its own soul, right? Like you heard that theme song, the story of Superman is all in there. You don't even have to know his name. It's about a hero, it's about somebody who brings joy to people's lives, who saves them, and the fact that they didn't have that, I mean, they just went with some like dark Hans Zimmer stuff for the new Superman. I was like, come on, man,
all those series have become very dark music oriented. I'm not really. I don't get it. I think they think the younger generation might like it more than us. I don't know, but I have a Yeah, tell me your theory now. I'm curious.
I have the theory on that. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Were you?
Well, no. I want to hear your theory because that music is too dark for me anyway.
Yeah, my theory is okay. So Christopher Nolan, when he took over the superhero stuff, it was back in the first of his Batmans was in 2005. The franchise was a mess. It was all we had like Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze in the last one, and it was just full of campy lines. It's almost like a modern day Adam West style Batman. Christopher Nolan took it and turned it into like this dark, brooding powerhouse, and that was great. Christopher Nolan kicked ass. He did a damn good Christopher Nolan movie, and people saw that. And for the next 10 years, I think like it just influenced everything that came out afterwards. You got Arrow, you got even the cartoons. The cartoons are now like mature, and they got like all these. The fight scenes are great and everything, but they kind of everything was trying to like reignite that Christopher Nolan spark. It was just like this badass vigilante. They turned everything dark, and kudos to Marvel because they kind of went the other way. They just wanted to make good movies in their own right. Starting with Iron Man, but that whole thing about I'm kind of losing my train of thought. But the whole thing about the darkness of Christopher Nolan's movies, which was appropriate for his stuff. It was like groundbreaking. I think they just try to kind of recycle that in the new DC movies, and it's a lot of it's just falling flat on its face, honestly.
Well, because Superman's cape wasn't dark red or dark blood red. I don't know. It just looked very dark. He was like your everyday guy just trying to save the world in the 70s. Right. That was what I loved about him. Hey, you also say you're Buddha. So what's the connection? Why Buddha? Do you feel connected to him, to the Buddha, or what's your reason there? I'm curious.
Well, back when I was in the cult, they called themselves Buddhists, and nowadays I'm not affiliated with any spiritual organization, but I actually think there's a lot of stuff missing from the Buddhist stuff. But that was just something I thought at the time was like Buddha fit my view of existences more than anybody else. But man, like when I look at it's Buddhism is basically a religion. It's in that I mean there's a couple different worldviews. So I'm going to start switching to philosophical. You tell me if this gets a little too philosophical or deep. But so there's like there's a religious worldview, which means it's kind of a tit for tat worldview. It's like you pay the man, you pay the price, and then you get heaven or hell or enlightenment based on how well you did on paying the price. You don't know why you're here. All you know is that you pay the price to go somewhere better. And that's why. And I realized like Buddhism and the cult, the Buddhist cult I was in, they were basically just another religion, which is they were like, hey, enlightenment's where you want to be. Enlightenment is like you have like this, you live in the state of ecstasy, right? 24/7. But in order to get there, you got to erase all this karma, all this shit that you've accumulated in past lives. You got to scrub it and clean. Oh, but guess what? It's super hard, even if you do a good job. So you have like a minimal chance of being enlightened, and you still got to pay the price. It's just going to be basically just suck it up and live in misery. And I was like, so I was looking at these things, and over time, my worldview shifted to more of a mystical worldview. And you can find hints of that in all religions, where it's like, no, the kingdom of God is within you. Ask and you shall receive. You don't need things like that. Was Buddha said, with the thoughts we make the world. It's the first line of the Dhammapada. Basically, it's happiness is unconditional, right? And that's kind of a hard pill to swallow, but it's possible to be happy, to embrace where you're at. And I know that you can't. I know that if you're in a shitty state of mind, you can't just jump right to happiness, but you can jump to something better. If you're in fear, if you live in fear, you can reach for anger. That's close enough. Then once you abide in anger, you can reach for maybe apathy, or irritation or frustration or revenge. And from there, you can reach for boredom, maybe when you get tired of being angry. If you just abide in the emotions, you don't inflame them, you can keep. So like, it's up to you. It's the ability to improve your mental state is always available to you. You don't need to pay the man. You don't need to whip yourself 1,000 times. You don't need to like meditate for thousands of hours or whatever. The only reason meditation is good is because it gives you a chance to just abide where you're at, and then you can naturally move up. I do believe there's like a natural benevolence underlying the world, but it's our resistance to it, our continual tendency to look away from it that causes us grief. So really, it's in the end, it's kind of our choice, which is kind of like the ultimate victim blaming and ultimately empowering at the same time, because everybody, empowering that everybody has access to it, victim blaming, and then you are in the end you do become responsible for what happens to you.
It's funny. It's funny you say this, because one of my latest WordPress, in fact, was about this idea that we have to stop saying we're going to make a resolution and just start finding solutions for ourselves. I think we get hung up on that word resolution, but we really should be focused on more of a solution for ourselves, shouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And the solution, from what you're like, I like your differentiation of resolution, where it's like the implication behind what I'm getting from your use of the word resolution is that, yeah, we gotta do all these things and then resolve this problem eventually. Whereas with a solution, what do we got in front of us? What can we solve immediately? What can we work from with the immediately available tools? I like that,
Because, by the way, I haven't heard much about the resolution in the last few days. Usually that's a word around here, but I'm not even hearing that. I think because we're all just bogged down with everything else that we're trying to get through day to day. What was I going to go with this? Okay, so with all of that, and yeah, I agree, it's all about up to us, and I think writing could help that. Now, I got to ask you about this, because you're a sci-fi. I'm sure you're an Indiana Jones fan. Harrison Ford's coming back. Gotta get. I watched all of them.
Yeah. Oh man, I love it. I hope that guy always stays healthy. I mean, it's kind of selfish. I hope he never dies. I say selfish because I do think, death can be a relief. But yeah, I'm not so much. I don't know as much of the peripheral mythology of Indiana Jones as I do with Star Wars. Like, I actually read like those spin-off books and stuff when I was a kid. But yeah, sorry, I don't have too much to say on it other than I'm looking forward to it. I want to see him come back.
I think we all do, because it's just something that we needed. That was actually a great way to end 2020 amongst everything else going on. Harrison Ford coming back was just great. And
is that your guy, Indiana Jones?
No, Superman. But I like it,
Superman, okay.
And I haven't really watched that series, because growing up I was about sports. I'm still all about the sports world. Like, that's just
check
my niche. So this isn't, comics and everything like that wasn't my main thing, but as I got older and got into the movies of Marvel and DC, I'm like, yeah, I actually do like this. And then Mom's a huge fan, so these comic book stores, that's another thing that's going out the wayside. Like, a lot of comic book stores are closing left and right, it seems like. But when you get those items and bring them home, there's nothing like it, right? I mean, when you get those items as they're closing, you're like, thank God I got it before they closed, is how I felt about it.
Yeah, I remember like being seriously sad when my mom threw out my comics when I was a kid. But yeah, I hear you say, yeah, there's like a personal energy to them, and I can see why people pay so much money for it. But yeah. Well, let me ask you real quick. Like,
sure.
Superman's your guy. Let me. What about him appeals to you?
So, it's the fists clenched in the air, flying around feeling. Because, well, there's photos of me in the NICU NICU for 77 days. And Mom said, nice. And my dad said too, like, my fist was clenched that I was going to get through those 77 days. And so it just resonated with me. And then Superman, I watch nearly almost every picture he has is him fist in the air flying. And I'm like, you know what? I resonate with that. So now I rollerblade around on one leg, and it's just like, there's so many comparisons. And I love the Daily News building. I lived 2 blocks away from it as a kid. So Mom would take me there, the Spinning Globe. I don't know if you've ever been, well, you said you were in D.C., so maybe you did come to New York. But the Daily News building is still a must-see, because they still have that revolving globe, which I always related to Superman, actually, in the middle of the lobby awesome. There. So that's kind of what it is. And then I have a lot of Superman shirts and whatnot. So he's kind of in my veins, actually.
To be honest, as a kid, I didn't like him growing up, and then he actually grew on me more than I was Batman guy, but he actually grew on me more than Batman, because as an adult, I started realizing, like, man, Batman is just he's just kind of like a recycled trauma. So basically, Batman is he never really gets over it. So he basically channels his trauma into the most constructive thing he can find, which is beating up villains. And he tries to replace his dead family by making a new one, right? Like Alfred and Robins and all that stuff.
Right.
But then he ends up pushing him away. He ends up being a dick to him because he doesn't want to suffer the same loss again. So it's like this constant cycle where he like collects this family, Robins, Batgirl, and all so forth and so forth. And then he pushes them away. And then he just keeps the reason I like Superman is that it's not if you look at the Superman universe, there's like way more powerful people than Superman. So it's really not
Luthor, absolutely.
It's really not power. Huh. Well, there's Darkseid. There's like it's been so long. that imp that annoys him, Mixel. There's a bunch of people where his power. It's always interesting because there's only a few, but like one at a time, So it's kind of like it doesn't happen very often. But if you start stacking them up, there's a lot of people who can challenge him just on sheer power level. But the thing is, it's not his power that's that grew on me. It's the fact that he could, if he wanted to. It's the fact that if you put a normal person in his place, if you gave a normal person all that power, they would become bad. But he doesn't.
Right. No,
with all that power,
he
constantly does the right thing. He strives to do the right thing. He's not the smartest. He's pretty disciplined. He's no Batman, but he's like,
he hated killing.
That's his real superpower.
Well, he hated killing the villain in one of the most recent Superman.
Right.
Very interesting to see him cry actually after that.
Yeah.
So you're right. He wanted to do good, and that's what he wanted to do. Oh, and my mom also visited Metropolis, and we know Clyde Wills, who was a big part of all of that. So there's it's all in my family DNA, really. You just said
Clyde?
Clyde Wills was sort of like I think he helped create Metropolis, the actual town, if I'm not mistaken.
Awesome.
But I got to ask you this, because he's an adult male, and that, people these days are like, oh, why are you not to me, but in general, they're like, you should get a job. Why are you into comics? I mean, do you feel any stigma when you talk about Superman or Star Wars, or do you feel like you're in a community that accepts? You know what I mean? Like, do you ever feel backlash? 'Cause, like, someone's saying, "Why are you still into this?" years later, or something like that.
I used to, but that was kind of like in middle school and high school. It was not. I mean, comics weren't cool in the '90s at all. But nowadays it's like I feel like I don't have any problem talking about them. I mean, I feel they're way more accepted. I never thought that there would be like a cartoon movie about superheroes when I was a kid, much less live action, $200 million blockbuster. So nowadays I actually feel like it's kind of, I used to avoid talking about that stuff out of embarrassment, but now it's more like, yeah, of course, everybody likes comics. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my view. I'm not. Is there backlash on your end?
No, I think I just do what I do. I always was hesitant to go to these comic movies as a kid. Well, when I got older, but I'm like, man, these are actually really good, and so I just got into it. As I'm listening to you, Mr. Kent Wayne, a big question pops up in my mind. Talk about leaving the cult. How were you able to do it?
It wasn't like a cult in the traditional sense where you lived someplace restricted and your activities were restricted. So the format for most of the members was you go do a cult meeting 2 nights, 1 weekend every month. And then you pay. For me, it was reduced because I was military, so $200 for me. But for most people, it's $500 to $1,500 a month. The pressure. For the inner circle, the pressure was much more extreme, but there was no physical. It was like a cult light. So they would say they would just use shame and kind of like these. Oh well, I mean, you guys are so lucky to be here. If this isn't for you, there's the door. So I can't. It barely qualifies as a cult, honestly. So for me, it was when they stopped doing it. I think because there's some investigations going on. When they stopped doing it, it wasn't that much of a big deal, honestly. So that's how I left. It just kind of, they just stopped having meetings. They started back up, I think, in last year, but I got a few emails to come back to them. Huh. But I was like, yeah, I don't need this anymore.
And I don't know, are you into the planetary system at all? Because I definitely have some feelings about Mars having water, considering I studied for a week at the Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, California, watching replica rovers do their thing, and then I find out they have life on Mars. I'm like, this is exactly what I was studying, and it's just kind of cool. But to me, like, the biggest campaign I want to start again is to get Pluto back as a planet. If you notice, since that happened, they declassified it. The world has gone to crap. And I'm like, this is Pluto's revenge right now. I'm telling you.
It's fun. So what are they classified as?
a mini star or some like a star or I don't know. It's not a protostar or something. I don't know, but it's not a planet. I'm thinking Pluto's really pissed at us for declassifying it. I really think.
Well, I don't know too much about the planetary system except I'm fascinated by aliens. Like I guess if you're talking about interstellar stuff, I'm all up on the conspiracies of the aliens and the recent.
So is the House of Representatives. They just funded UFO research in the latest bill we got. Did you hear about that?
I saw like within the next 6 months, right?
Yeah, it was in the next 6.
Yeah. Man, I love this rabbit hole. I'm glad you brought it up. This is one actually where I gotta watch out who I mention it to, because I'm like, I don't know how deep they want to go down this thing. But yeah, that, and I don't know if you've heard about the ranch out in was it Utah? Skinwalker Ranch, where the government, yeah, the government's got their fingers in like that's funded. There's government fund projects there too, and supposedly interdimensional stuff. But yes, aliens. I have a lot of hope. Aliens bring me a lot of hope. I mean, I hope the case is that they're kind of watching us like teenagers, as if we're bratty teenagers. Like, I hope they're like, hey, you know what, we can't. Like in Star Trek, where they don't interfere with the Prime Directive, where they don't interfere with other races, other species too much.
Right.
I hope that's what they're doing to us, because they're like, look, they're a bunch of idiots, and they're coming along. We'll step in before something catastrophic happens, but we're just going to leave them alone. Let them figure it out for themselves. I hope that's the case.
By the way, they are Twitter trends nowadays. I don't know if you saw this, but there was like a former Israeli defense chief that said
I did see that.
Big conversation between the Intergalactic Federation and the U.S. and Israel. I'm like, this is news. This is unbelievable. How is this news?
Yeah,
but
the guy's like a general. He was like a pilot, and he's like some super respected scientist or something like that. Yeah. I did read about that. He said like Trump already knew about the aliens for a long time, and they're already on Earth and stuff. I hope it's the case.
Well, there's a reason why the Space Force was started. You know what I mean? There's always been that feeling to me, like there's a reason why he started this. By the way, I always wondered how the 2016 election in and of itself became it, because it was so abnormal. I'm like, is this a distraction from what's really going on? I started to really believe that, actually.
Oh, you think like the 2016 was a distraction from alien disorder?
From anything going on that we didn't know about. I don't know. It just was a very strange year that year.
Yeah, it didn't feel like society was coming apart at the seam. It kind of felt like, well, I got to rephrase that. To me, like there just seemed to be like so much apathy and like nothing. It seemed like we were locked in a collision course with just a bitter downward spiral, basically. Or we were just locked into that bitter downward spiral. People weren't listening to each other. Nobody cared. There's a lack of caring about a lot of pretty much everything. And then, and then we get hit by the pandemic. So I'm not sure. Sorry, I kind of veered off subject.
No, I love that you said that, because also I noted a while ago, we can't be apathetic anymore. We have to just start really getting involved, or we're going to lose this country. I really believe that.
You think so?
I do. I don't want to see it slip away, and I feel like sometimes it just feels like it's going to slip away from us at any moment. All right, Kent Wayne, I got to ask you a couple more questions. Firstly,
sure.
Who do you resonate with more, the Kent or the Wayne side of you? Obviously, you named yourself that because you have those personalities, and I don't know if they conflict or not, but do you ever feel like one weighing over the other, sort of like Jekyll Hyde, minus the whole...
Well, it's a little... there's some irony there, because I resonate more with the Kent part. Like I try to go much more by my feelings, but the Wayne part, I've lived so much of my life like that. I mean, and I still live like that. Like, I still wake up at like 3 or 4, knock out a few hours of writing, go to the gym, even though I'm retired, and then I tend to my stuff. I have like a rigorous schedule, supplements, this, that, and the other. So even though like I try to go more with the feelings side, or I resonate more with that, as far as like what my actions look like, I'm still, it's much more the Wayne side.
That's kind of interesting. I obviously am more the Kent side, but I could see that. And then one thing that people don't know about you, and you've been blogging as the Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha for quite a while. How long have you been blogging for anyway? Like, what's the timeline?
That's, I think 4 years, maybe 5 years. So 4 to 5 years.
And we'll be right back with Kent Wayne on Alex Garrett Podcasting.
We are always adapting at Alex Garrett Podcasting.
Well, thanks. I'm glad to be back here with Kent Wayne. And Kent, the Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha on WordPress. Got a few more questions for you. So, what's one thing that all your people that follow you and interact with you, what's one thing that they don't know?
Man, I've opened up so much on all my stories. I told them about the cult, told them I was in the military, told them I was Asian American. I'm kind of drawing a blank right now.
That's okay.
Honestly. Well, okay. Here you go. Here's some non-consequential fact. I went to private school for 3 years when I was a kid.
Wow. And did that? How was that? Because I went to a private high school, elementary through high school, so I'm very involved with that.
Yeah, I went to a private elementary school called Wingra in Wisconsin for six grades. Man, it was like one in elementary school or 2 years in elementary school and then 1 year in middle school. But anyways, as far as how was that, it was interesting. Like if you saw me back then, you'd be like, this kid is going nowhere. Because the school was like, it had a super liberal format where they didn't pressure you to complete assignments. What they did was like they had different subjects, right? Like the obvious ones, science, math, history, all that stuff. They set up these stations. Every week you'd have to pick an assignment from these stations and fulfill all your and at the end of the week you'd have check-in where they would look over what you did and what you didn't do. And the good students, they would do all their assignments. Obviously they would have zero things to do, zero outstanding items to check in. With me, I remember I'd be like 14, 15 items at check-in. And they're like, what are you doing? What are you doing all day? And I'd be like, I don't know. Honestly, I was reading comics up in the loft, but these cycles would happen where I just build up massive amounts of items at check-in, like 20, 30 outstanding items. And then I just go through this, I just power through them all like in a week. I just work nonstop, and then get them all done. And my parents weren't pleased, but that's it's interesting. Like, and then later I developed like a pretty regular work ethic, which surprised even me, because up until high school, I was even up until high school, I was just playing video games and just I was working. I was physically disciplined in high school, but I had no discipline with anything else.
Well, I'm glad that you found this as a discipline, and then keep writing and keep entertaining people during the time where we need entertainment the most. Let me tell you, Ken. Thank you for joining us today, and please do come back as your stories continue to be published. What's it like publishing in a pandemic? Is it just fun to just put it online and boom, there it is, or do you wish you had the hard copy books out as well, or do you have a hard copy as well?
I have a hard copy for Echo Volumes 1 and 2, but the sales, I'm an indie author. To be honest, I only scratch out maybe a few dozen bucks a month, $20, $40 a month. I keep the prices low. I'm just happy for the exposure. Most of all, I'm happy that, I wake up with a purpose. It gives me a sense of purpose. And then, beautiful. And that's, So I know ideally it would be like, I would make a lot of money at this, and this is all I would do for money. But I'm more than blessed. I got other stuff that supports me financially. I got this for my sense of purpose, and it pleases enough people that, that's enough return for me, honestly. Where
can we find you, aside from alongside WordPress, I should say?
Let's see, I got Facebook and Twitter, but those basically just mirror my WordPress, honestly. If you look up the podcast Strained Brains, I don't have anybody. The guy, my roommate, he was also former military. He left for a few months from Mexico. So I don't know. I've got a few more episodes, but after that, I'm not even sure if I'm going to keep doing it. I'll keep it up. But other than that, Amazon.com. If you just type in Echo and Kent Wayne into the search bar, see all my books. I got Core Thank, Barbarian Valuable. If you don't want something so heavy, something kind of goofy and absurd, that's there as well.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining me today, Ken, and we'll be following your journey at the Dirty Sci-Fi Buddha.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Alex.
I'm Alex Garrett, and we will talk to you soon. As I'm listening to you, Mr. Kent Wayne, a big question pops up in my mind. Talk about leaving the cult. How were you able to do it?
It wasn't like a cult in the traditional sense where you lived someplace restricted and your activities were restricted. So the format for most of the members was you go do a cult meeting two nights, one weekend every month. And you pay, for me, it was reduced because I was military, so $200 for me. But for most people, it's $500 to $1,500 a month. The pressure, for the inner circle, the pressure was much more extreme. But there was no physical. It was like a cult light. So they would say they would just use shame and kind of like these. Oh well, I mean, you guys are so lucky to be here. If this isn't for you, there's the door. So I can't. It barely qualifies as a cult, honestly. So for me, it was when they just made it, when they stopped doing it. I think because there's some investigations going on. When they stopped doing it, it wasn't that much of a big deal, honestly. So that's how I left. Is it just kind of they just stopped having meetings. They started back up, I think, in last year, but I got a few emails to come back to them. Huh. But I was like, yeah, I don't need this anymore. So,
well, Ken, thank you so much again, and I'm going to send you the link when this is up.
Okay, yeah, send me the links and I'll share them on Facebook and all that, WordPress. So, absolutely, thank you so much.
Feel free to add me on Facebook as a friend. I'd love to keep in touch. Sure,
absolutely.
Cool. All right, that is that. I'll talk to you soon, and thanks again, sir.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.